Hi everybody. I'm very excited for today's episode because hearing people's dating stories is one of my personal favorite pastimes. And I asked you to send in your dating horror stories or just your dating stories that are hilarious. And y'all did not disappoint. Before we get into it, please remember to subscribe because at 100 subscribers, I'll throw this podcast into the trash. Totally kidding. I'm going to throw it on Spotify. At 500 subscribers, I definitely want to do something special, like make a t-shirt design and give away 10 t-shirts to OG listeners because I appreciate you. And at 1,000 subscribers, I will create a space for a podcast setup and start video for these episodes. So subscribe and talk to me in the comments too, please. Thank you. But let's not wait any longer for these hilarious and horrifying dating stories. Just an FYI, these are your stories. They are not mine. But I'm your host, Alexandria. Welcome to the Big Heart, Big Booty podcast. All right, so this first story is hilarious, but it's also low-key kind of disgusting. I feel really lucky to not know if anyone I've ever been on a date with has done this. So, all right, first story. Andy, that's me, will attest to this, but my dating life has been an absolute shit show for the last year. Whose hasn't been? Absolutely true. I started the year getting dumped by someone I never dated, got mono that nearly hospitalized me from like one gross British dude I kissed to get over the first guy, and came out as bisexual. Great start. Anyway, dating women has so far been the best thing that's ever happened to me, but I have one gay dating story that gives me nightmares. So, in January of 2020, I started talking to this girl on Hinge. She and I had similar career goals, but not much else in common. We had kind of talked for a few months, but never really gone out, and finally, in April, we met for coffee. The date was painful. Full disclosure. She was sweet, but spent the entire time talking about her ex-boyfriend of 8 years. Let's just say there was not a second date. A few weeks go by, we both ghost each other. Around this time, I changed jobs, and I'm adjusting to the new job. Everything's going well. I walk into work one day, and guess who also happens to work for the same company? Yikes. Somehow, where she worked never came up on that first date, and it was awkward seeing her. I literally didn't even recognize her at first, but since I was barely going to see her, it was fine. Some months go by. We're nice in passing, but never really stop to talk. No one at my work knows that I know her. But about 2 weeks ago, my supervisor and I are planning a presentation about infection control. She begins telling me a story about an employee of the company that had a serious breach of infection control protocol. Yikes. Okay. Obviously, that's weird and gross. Ooh, I skipped a part. Apparently, this employee had stood in the kitchen of someone's home, wiped her own ass, smelled the towel that she wiped her ass with, and threw it away. What the fuck? Obviously, that's weird and gross, but I wouldn't have thought any further about it except my supervisor said she should know. She should know better, considering the fact that she has more training. Fast forward a few days later, and I'm recording the presentation with my supervisor and our CEO, who happens to mention the situation again. My CEO shares a specific detail about this girl, and I realize that the person she's talking about is the girl I went on that one date with and have to see occasionally. Ew! Ew. Who does that? That is so disgusting. Literally, ew. This is all that's going through my mind. Like, tell me you don't wash your ass without telling me you don't wash your ass. Disgusting. I'm really glad you found out through work and, like, didn't date this person, though. Like, could you imagine if you had dated her and worked with her and then found this out? That's disgusting. Ew. Cannot. Alright, so in my opinion, this next one is kind of a bit of a doozy, and it's also kind of ridiculous. I read this story and was like, the person that they are talking about needs therapy immediately. But here's the story. There was a guy that I was friends with for a long time. I would have considered him to be one of my best friends, and I definitely felt some kind of way for him. But anytime he got a girlfriend, he would stop talking to me. Red flag. It got to the point where I was getting really annoyed because I did not appreciate being ghosted by him. He was one of my best friends, but he clearly was not treating me the same. Anyway, he comes back into my life and I introduce him to one of my other best friends. They become best friends and we start hanging out as a trio sometimes. Now, you probably think you know where the story is going, but trust me, you don't. In 2020, after my friend encouraged him to be honest about his feelings for me, he told me that he thought I was the one. We would talk about how I felt the same way and how many kids we wanted and what we wanted our life to look like. And we talked about why he would ghost me when he got into relationships, and honestly, we just confided in each other about a lot of stuff quite frequently. I genuinely thought this time was going to be different because our friendship was turning into a relationship, and he pretty much said that he would never let me go again since I was his soulmate. The presidential election comes around, and for the most part, I keep politics to myself. But this boy was a Republican, and my friend, that was in our trio, was pretty level-headed about these things, but was not about to vote for Orange Cheeto Puff, so they would get into arguments. One day, he texted me a meme of someone, and he said that he was going to send it to my friend, and I told him, she doesn't like that, don't. And he goes, do you agree with her? And I said, it doesn't matter, everyone has the right to vote for who they want. A few days go by and I haven't heard from him. I text him and he does not respond. After a week, I am ready to drive to his house, that's like an hour away, because I'm really concerned that something's happened. So I text him and tell him if he doesn't text me back, that I will come check on him. And he basically just sends a text that says he needs some space. Ouch. The hell? Then, after a few months, he responds and goes into a huge-ass rant about how he has worked so hard for the last 4 years and he doesn't feel supported by my friend who will not vote for Orange Cheeto Puff. We get into an argument and he ended our friendship and relationship because of someone else's right to vote and their choice on who they were voting for. I think he has also told her that she shouldn't be able to vote. Yikes, bro. What the hell? Okay, so flash forward to 2021. We tried to make up and be friends again. It clearly was not the same, but this was an important person to me, and so I was willing to be his friend. I felt like I was always, from the start of this friendship, putting in effort, and I always felt like he had one foot out the door. So I'm sure you can understand why I was guarded. I definitely miss talking to him, though, and will always love him as a friend. Now we're at the present day. He randomly decides to delete me on social media, so I text him to see what's up because sure, we might not have talked in like a month, but life gets busy sometimes. And he just responds back with, you don't put effort into this friendship. Okay. I ended the friendship because I was sick of being treated like shit, but for real, he's delusional. But it no longer matters because I make out with my gay best friend for attention and he could never get this anymore. That's hilarious. I love that. Pop off. I mean, my opinion on that story is that that person is just emotionally immature. I have a bunch of friends who voted for Orange Cheeto Puff, and while I don't agree and we have conversations about all of that, I wouldn't cut them out just because of who they voted for. Life is nuanced and complex, and that just sounds like somebody who has a really closed mind, and I'm really sorry because that's super unfortunate. But like, you right, he could never get it now. Okay, this next story is really short, but it's hilarious and I love it. So, I got this DM from Instagram. I met a guy at a bar and he asked me out, but I ghosted him. A week later, I texted him to come over at like 2 a.m. Somehow, while we were hooking up, he chipped my tooth. This is my first sex injury. It's fine because we've been seeing each other since. That is hilarious. I can honestly say that I have never had, knock on wood, I've never had a sex injury before. That, especially like chipping your tooth and that being your first sex injury, like having to go to the dentist. I'm assuming you went to the dentist. That's like that's a lot. That's a lot. No, thank you. Okay, I love all of these stories, but this next one I think will probably hold a special place in my heart, it's just kind of hilarious. So this is the story of the first time I ever gave a dude a blowjob. I was a late bloomer, to put it nicely, and was honestly just looking for someone to get sex stuff under my belt with so I could say that I did it. Fair. I matched with this dude who lives like an hour away from me on Bumble, and after talking to him for a while, I tell him to come over. So he does. Of course he does. They all would. We go to my room and start going at it. Okay, it's getting hot and heavy. I happen to be on my period, so I tell him that I'm just going to give him head. And he's obviously okay with that because he's a dude. Yeah, 100%. Now, I didn't want to tell him that I had never sucked someone off before, because why would I do that? My sexting game is strong, so I can't make it seem like I don't know what I'm doing after sexting him for weeks. Plus, I'm pretty sure I know what I'm doing. But back to doing the deed, he looks down at me and goes, "You're so good at that. I bet you love sucking dick, huh?" Oh my God. Ew. If somebody looked down and said that to me, I would immediately stop, to be honest. And when I tell you, it took every bone in my body not to crack up laughing, because it was my first time. Can't stress this to you enough. It was my first time. But like the champ I am, I just looked up and said, "Yeah, daddy," and went back to being a hoe. It wasn't my best work, but it was good for my first time. And I blocked him after that. Okay. I don't call men daddy. I did at one point, but gross. I don't do it anymore. They call me daddy. And there will never be another man that I call daddy. I'm just going to let y'all know that. Hold me accountable to that, please, because they just don't deserve it. I haven't met a single one who deserves that. End of story. End of story. All right. During Greek life initiation week, I just read that so weird. During Greek life initiation week, my sophomore year, I hooked up with a guy at a frat party whose pickup line was, "You look like my brother's girlfriend." Okay. I didn't think it was weird at the time because I was wasted. About a week later, a friend of mine who was in the frat told me that that was their form of hazing, that they would use weird pickup lines to hook up with girls. Weird, but it worked. I have questions. Why did that work? Was he funny? Did it just come off as like weird and funny and like totally breaking the ice? Or how did you feel in that moment? I'm so like, what? Because I have no idea how I'd react. No, I didn't go to college, so or I didn't go to like a 4-year university and party it up whenever I was like 18, 19, 20, and 21, right? Like, I have no idea what that was like. So I'm just curious, whenever he came up to you, were you like, I'll overlook it because you're cute? Or were you just like, yeah, I'm just wasted and it works, whatever? I'm curious. I'm genuinely curious. All right, this is my last story. I was in France studying abroad and met up with a guy that was on Grindr. First off, he did not look anything like his profile picture, and his personality was a bit much for me. So we go to a bar, and he starts going off on his life trauma, and he definitely has mommy issues. But I'm getting drunk to make the situation go by faster, and we leave to go to his place. Honestly, I don't even want to do anything with him while I'm drunk, but he kept trying to make out with me on the street, and I'm really not into PDA, so clearly did not enjoy that. It made me cold and distant, and he was annoying because he kept trying to make out with me on the tram, and because I didn't want to, I started sobering up pretty quick. Okay, fair. And I know that I really don't want to fuck this guy, but I'm not confrontational, so okay. I'm not confrontational, so I don't want to tell him that I don't want to have sex with him. So what I do instead is I message one of my friends from back home and tell her to call me in 5 minutes and tell me that one of our friends has died. I mean, you're going to extreme lengths, my guy. You could have just said no. But I guess you did say you're not confrontational, so I understand. I have anxiety about stuff like that too. Okay, minutes go by and we are at the entrance of his building, and she calls and I put it on speaker and she tells me that one of her friends was hit by a car while jogging. I mean, she's a good friend. I pretend to be shook and try to fake cry, but I'm not a crier really to begin with, and he just thinks it's all bullshit. And I tried so hard for the tears to come up, and honestly, it worked. But he thought I was full of shit, and he still tried to get me upstairs. Ew, what a scumbag. I was just like, I need to go home, and I was acting completely hysterical, and eventually I was like, I gotta go. And I leave, and I call my friend, and I say, thanks, girly. And then I just have a chill night. Listen, okay, I'm kind of mean. I'm mean to men, honestly. If I want nothing to do with you, you will know. Even if I go on a date with you, like, I'm kind of cold. And I'm surprised that the cold and distant part didn't work, and that he couldn't take the hint that you were like, nah, I'm good. Honestly. But you know what? He's a man. I'm not surprised. And to be honest, I'll probably never recover from these stories. I'm sure they're not like the most wild stories out there, but like, holy shit, the asswipe one? Ooh, come on. Who does that? Just like, it's like that TikTok where they're like, you the motherfucker who doesn't open your butt cheeks and let the water drain through, do you? I don't think so. Ooh, it's disgusting. And the lengths some of y'all go. I mean, but I feel like some people are also just not relationship material, and some people just aren't good people, and some people need therapy as soon as possible because they have small little brains. But I'm really glad that the tooth chip, I can't say that, but I'm really glad that the tooth chip story has a happy ending. I hope you two are both going strong. I don't know why I can't talk today. If you're not, my condolences to your tooth. To be honest, my dating life is really not nearly as exciting. I do have some stories that I wish I could tell you, but for privacy of the people who I know may or may not listen to this podcast, I just am hesitant to share them. But I do have some juicy ones, and I'm actually really sad that I can't share them with you because I think y'all would be dying. Everyone that I ever tell these stories to, they're like, You what? They what? Huh? And they're good stories. So maybe one day. I kind of want to make this a series on this, honestly, because wild dating stories are my favorite. And I'm also currently kind of conducting a dating experiment. So I just deleted Bumble because I'm so annoyed with men on there who will say one thing and do another and give mixed signals. It's so annoying, but I know that's just kind of like the dating field in general right now, whatever. But I am doing a dating experiment where once a month I go on a date. I wish I could go on a date like every week, but I'm just not that girl. I have no desire really at the moment. I have too much anxiety for all that too. But I am doing a dating experiment where I try to go on one date a month, or if I like the person, I'll go on more dates. But if it doesn't work out, then I go on a date the next month with a new person, and I've been doing that for a little while. Some months I did miss, I'm not gonna lie, but I've been journaling and I've been writing those dating experiences down, so I'm really excited to share those one day with you because let me tell you, okay, I've been on some dates. I've had some experiences that were not my favorite. Again, though, thank you to anyone who shared their story with me and allowed me to read it on this podcast. Absolutely horrifying and hilarious at the same time. I really appreciate you. And I wanted to give some of my favorite books that I have been reading. I'm not giving them away. That made it sound like I was going to give them away. I'm not giving them away. I want to give you the titles of these books. So if you're interested, you can yourself go read them. So the first one is The Game of Desire by Shan Boody. It is a game changer for me. Absolute game changer. I started reading this book right after I left the Christian church and had a bunch of like horrible ideas about dating and what dating should look like and what dating should be and what sex is and what sex isn't and all that kind of stuff. And I knew I wanted to date, but I just kind of felt like I needed to learn the psychology of dating and relationships and what it means to find a partner, and does that partner have to be your life partner, or can they just be a partner for a season, and is it okay to have sex before marriage? And I had a lot of questions. And Shan Boody's book, and Shan Boody in general, you should definitely check out her YouTube channel, and she has a podcast called Lovers and Friends. It's really good, but she just kind of helped me actually get myself out there and helped me understand a lot of the psychology behind dating. Now, through her, I found a lot of books, and one of those books is Come As You Are, written by Emily I wrote this down too. Emily Nagoski. There we go. And this book is really transformative, and it was really helpful for me, especially just as like plus size dating and learning about sex and what sex is and the actual like biology behind sex, because again, like sex education really isn't that good, and it's definitely not good in the Christian church. So I learned a lot about our biology, about our desire, how it works, how we operate. It's really women driven, but it's such a good book to read that I recommend it to everyone. And then the last book that I have fully read that I'm recommending, I have a lot of dating books that I'm like halfway through, so I don't want to recommend those because I'm not quite sure yet. But this next book I read like in one sitting. I absolutely devoured it. It was so helpful. I found it through I think it was Where My Mom's House podcast with Christina P. and Bert Kreischer's wife, Leanne Kreischer, and it's Sex Tips for a Straight Woman from a Gay Man. Absolute game changer for me. I read it as pretty much as soon as I knew I wanted to be sexually active, and as soon as I really possibly could, if we're being honest. This book, ladies, listen, okay? If you are trying to please someone with a penis, this is an absolutely needed book. It is incredibly helpful. No one knows the penis better than a gay man, in my opinion. And I think the opinion of this author as well. So it's really good, and I recommend it, especially if you're trying to like up your game, up your skills, if you just want to know. Oh, and you know what? Another book that I'm reading that I never finished, it's only halfway through, but for the men, is She Comes First. Let me grab it and I'll see who it's by. Okay, so yeah, it's She Comes First, The Thinking Man's Guide to Pleasuring a Woman by Ian Kerner. He also has a PhD. He is awesome. This book is amazing. Highly recommend, especially for couples and relationships. If you couple those two books together and read them, I think your sex life will go through the roof if you're in the market for a little bit of help. And I would really love to hear your book recommendations. I have a couple books coming in the mail about dating that I'm really excited about. This honestly is a topic that I'm really passionate about, especially coming from my background. I feel like I've had to unlearn a lot of things. I'm still unlearning a lot of things. So I'm really excited for a couple new books to come in the mail. And if you have any recommendations, leave them in the comments below. Also, feel free to leave your dating horror story or DM me on Instagram or whatever, email me. Like, I love hearing these stories. I think they're absolutely great. Or if you just have a story that's like hilarious, definitely send it to me. Please, 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 please. But other than that, that's all I have for you for this episode. I am really excited for next week's episode. I'm not even going to tell you what it is because I'm just so excited and I don't want to spoil it, but it is a great surprise for my friends and my family and really anyone who wants to meet an incredible woman in my life. Okay, I told you I wasn't going to tell you what it's about, but I kind of just did. Anyway, that's all I have for you this week. Thank you so much for listening. Please don't forget to subscribe. I post every single Friday. And I love you, and I thank you for listening to this. Have a great weekend. I'll see you in the next one.